The Citadel had never been so quiet. After the shocking scene in the Great Hall, everyone seemed afraid to speak too loudly, as if words themselves might shatter the fragile calm that followed. Soldiers had sealed the entrance, and the crowd had been moved outside under tight control. The celebration that was supposed to mark a new golden age was now a moment of fear and whispers. Captain Luke Harris walked quickly through the long corridor that led to the Royal Infirmary. His boots echoed on the white floor, each step heavy with worry. The hallways smelled faintly of antiseptic and metal. Ahead of him, two medics guided the Queen's stretcher with careful hands. She was still unconscious. Her face looked pale, too still, almost lifeless. Luke had seen people hurt before, soldiers broken on the battlefield, but this was different. This was something he couldn't explain. He had seen the light around her when she fell, had felt the strange vibration in the air. A weapon, he knew, could cause such a thing. And when she whispered those last words, "They're still here," he knew there was more to it than anyone else realized. The doors slid open, and the physicians hurried inside. Machines around the Queen began to hum and blink as they examined her. Luke stood behind them silently, his arms crossed, watching. The head physician, an older woman named Clara, checked the readings and frowned. "She's alive," Clara said, "but her brain is in a deep wave state. It's like she's dreaming while awake. Her body is stable, but her mind is somewhere else." "Can you wake her?" Luke asked. "Not yet," Clara said. "Something inside her mind is blocking every attempt. It's not a natural coma. It's more like the mind is caught between two signals." Luke stared at the screen, showing faint glowing lines representing the Queen's brain activity. He had no idea what it meant, but his gut told him that crown had something to do with it. That strange shimmer, that light, that voice she had heard. Outside the infirmary window, the lights of the city tower glowed through the night. The coronation had been broadcast across every human world. By now every leader and citizen must have seen the Queen collapse on live broadcast. The Alliance Council would demand answers. Luke called Dana Brooks, his second officer and longtime friend. She arrived a few minutes later, still wearing her formal guard uniform, her hair disheveled, eyes wide with worry. "What's the situation?" she asked. "She's alive, barely, but the doctors don't understand what caused it," he said. Dana glanced toward the glass wall where the Queen lay. "People outside are going crazy, Luke. The council's members are calling for emergency meetings. Some are saying she was poisoned. Others believe it's a sign of weakness, that the Queen isn't ready to rule." Luke sighed. "They're wrong. This isn't about weakness or poison. It's something older, something buried right under our feet." Dana frowned. "You mean the old systems under the crown chamber?" "Yes," Luke said. "Before the ceremony, a strange signal came through my cum device. It was short, very weak, like a ghost message. It came from the Citadel archives below the throne room." "What did it say?" Dana asked softly. "Only 2 words," Luke replied. "The crown remembers." Dana looked uneasy. "I thought those systems were shut down centuries ago." "So did I," Luke said. "But when the crown touched her head, something in that old machine came alive again." The door behind them opened suddenly, and the head priest entered, his face tight with exhaustion and fear. "Captain Harris," he said, "the council demands an explanation. People are asking if the army failed to protect the Queen. I told them you were investigating." Luke turned to face him. "Tell them the truth that we don't know what happened yet. But also tell them to keep the hall sealed. No one enters the throne room until I say so." The priest hesitated. "That chamber has been sacred for hundreds of years." Luke interrupted. "And it just tried to kill our Queen. Treat it like a crime scene." The priest left, murmuring prayers under his breath. Luke turned back toward the window, looking at the still figure of Queen Eleanor. "She was awake for a second after she fell," he said softly. "She said they're still here." "What do you think she meant, Dana?" Dana looked thoughtful. "Could it be legends about the old rulers leaving behind their minds inside the crown? The idea that the knowledge of every ruler was stored there somehow? That's exactly what I'm afraid of," Luke said. "But if that's true, then she didn't just inherit a throne. She inherited every memory of human rule in history. And if those memories woke all at once?" His voice trailed off, unfinished but clear. Dana whispered, "Then she wasn't attacked. She was overwhelmed." The two of them stood silently for a long time. The faint sound of machines filled the room. The queen's chest rose and fell slowly, as if time itself was breathing through her. Luke walked out into the corridor again. Guards stood at attention, their faces pale, their eyes shadowed by fear. No one spoke. The Citadel, once a place of laughter and grand feasts, now felt like a tomb built of light and silence. As Luke passed through the hall where the queen had fallen, he stopped and looked at the marble floor. The crown had been taken for study, but a faint mark still glowed where it had touched the ground. It's a small ring of light, soft and pulsing, like a memory that refused to fade. He knelt beside it and touched the spot gently. The light buzzed under his fingers, and for one moment he thought he heard whispering, again quiet words that weren't his. When he stood, his face was pale, but his eyes were calm. He now knew he was standing in the middle of something large and hidden. The world believed their queen had fainted. But Luke Harris understood that she had touched something ancient, and it had touched her back. The golden banners of the Citadel danced gently above the crowd, catching the light from hundreds of crystal lamps. People from every world under the human alliance had come to see the moment their new queen would be crowned. The air was filled with sounds of slow drums, soft music, and the low murmurs of thousands waiting to witness history. Queen Eleanor stood in the center of the hall, quiet but proud. Her gown shimmered like silver mist, and her crown, resting on a velvet pillow, glowed faintly with lines of blue light. To all watching, she seemed calm, the very image of peace and power. Yet close to her stood Captain Luke Harris, head of the Royal Guard, and he could see what others could not. Beneath the calm smile, her hands were trembling. Luke had served 3 rulers before her. He was a man who noticed things that others ignored. While some guards looked at the crowd for danger, Luke watched their queen. Her breathing was uneven, her eyes cloudy with exhaustion. He had heard she had not slept for days, worrying about the world still divided after years of war. Far behind her, the priests of the old council finished their chant, and the head priest lifted the crown from its pillow. It was said that the crown carried not only the right to rule, but the memory of every ruler before her. That was only a legend now, or so people believed. To most, it was a story told to make the crown seem holy again after centuries of bloodshed. The head priest began to lower the crown toward her head. The crowd held its breath. Cameras flashed. Every person in the great hall leaned forward at once. At that moment, the queen's eyes flickered. Luke saw her pupils widen, as if she saw something that no one else could. Her lips moved slightly. He could not hear what she said, but he saw her mouth the word remember. The crown touched her hair. Light burst out like a wave of sunlight breaking through a storm. The music stopped. The glass lamps above them trembled. Some people gasped in wonder, thinking the light was part of the ceremony. Luke felt something else entirely, a sharp sting behind his eyes, as if the air itself had become electric. The queen took 1 step forward, then 2. She smiled faintly, lifted her head, and began to say the royal vow. Her voice started strong, clear as a bell, saying the old words that every queen before her had spoken. But halfway through, her voice faltered, her breath caught, her eyes rolled back. Then suddenly she fell. The crown hit the floor with a dull metallic sound that echoed through the hall. The audience gasped as one. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, people screamed. The guards rushed forward, forming a circle around the fallen queen. Luke dropped to one knee beside her. Her skin was pale, colder than he expected. The faint blue halo of the crown still glimmered faintly on the ground, flickering like a heartbeat fading away. "Get the physicians!" Luke shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. "Seal the hall!" The great doors slammed shut. The drums had stopped. The music had stopped. Only the queen's slow, uneven breathing could be heard, mixed with the low hum of energy still hanging in the air. The chief physician arrived with 2 helpers. They knelt beside her, scanning her with small handheld devices, whispering words Luke couldn't hear. He looked up at the head priest who stood frozen near the dais, his face pale with shock. "What happened?" Luke asked, rising to his feet. "I do not know," the priest stammered. The light tit was stronger than ever before. The crown's old systems must have awakened again, but that is impossible. It has been dormant for centuries. Luke frowned. "You're sure?" "Yes," the priest said, clutching his robes. "No one alive knows how to make it glow like that anymore. Luke looked down at the Queen once more. For a moment, her lips moved again. He bent closer to hear. Her voice was no stronger than a whisper. "They're still here," she mumbled. Luke felt a chill run down his spine. "Who?" he asked softly, but she did not answer. The physicians lifted her onto a hover stretcher and began moving her toward the infirmary chamber behind the hall. As they left, the crowd parted quietly, fear and confusion spreading like smoke. Some whispered that she had been poisoned. Others said she had been attacked through invisible signals. No one really knew the truth. Luke stayed behind for a moment, staring at the spot where she had fallen. The crown still lay on the cold marble floor, its soft blue glow fading to nothing. Bent down and picked it up carefully. The metal was warm against his palm, almost like it was alive. When he looked at its inner surface, tiny lines of light shimmered there, pulsing in strange patterns. He had never seen anything like it. For a moment, he thought he heard faint voices, soft, layered, many speaking as one, but when he blinked, the sound was gone. Luke straightened, holding the crown close to his chest. His jaw tightened. Didn't know what had just happened, but deep inside, he felt the truth moving like a shadow behind his thoughts. Something inside the crown had awakened. Something human. And whatever it was, it had chosen that exact moment to return. Everyone in the hall had trembled when the Queen collapsed. But only Luke Harris knew that what they had seen was not an illness or an accident. It was the beginning of something far greater and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Night settled over the citadel, but the great palace did not sleep. Every window still glowed with pale light. Guards stood along every hall, whispering only when they had to. The news of the Queen's collapse had spread everywhere. Some people outside prayed for her life. Others were already wondering who would lead if she did not wake. Inside the medical room, the air smelled of disinfectant and fear. Queen Eleanor lay on the white bed, still and silent, covered by a thin sheet. Her face looked calm, but machines around her showed strange, shifting patterns of energy. No one could explain them. The doctors had tried every test, every medicine they knew. Nothing worked. Captain Luke Harris sat near her bed. His uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes heavy from long hours without rest. Still, he refused to leave. He had seen too much in his life to be fooled by simple answers. He knew something larger was moving under the surface of this mystery. He watched the fluctuations on the monitor. They were not random. The lights blinked in short bursts that almost looked like code. He leaned closer, his brow furrowing. Dana Brooks entered quietly, holding a tablet in one hand. "Luke, we found something," she said. He turned toward her. "What is it?" Her face looked uncertain. "There's an old vault under the throne room that hasn't been opened for generations. When I checked the building plans, I found a hidden data core connected directly to the base of the coronation platform. The crown was linked to it." Luke's heart pounded faster. "So the crown wasn't just decoration," he said. "No," Dana confirmed. "It was some kind of ancient interface. When the Queen wore it, it activated the entire system." "How do you know that?" he asked. She placed the tablet on the table. "'Cause I ran a scan an hour ago."
I'll read them now. We're reading soon.
Under the throne room surged right after she fell. The energy hasn't stopped since. Luke rose to his feet, his jaw tight with resolve. "Get to people ready. We're going down there." "Are you sure that's wise?" The council ordered everyone to stay out. "I don't follow the council, Dana," he said. "I follow her." They left the infirmary quietly. No one stopped them as they moved down the silent corridors. The lower levels of the citadel were old and cold. The air smelled of metal dust and forgotten time. When they reached the sealed door to the vault, Luke placed his hand on the scanner. The security system flashed and then unlocked with a hiss of air. The huge steel doors slid open, revealing a dark chamber filled with machines that hadn't been touched for hundreds of years. Dim lights glowed from between thick cables that ran along the walls like veins. Dana stepped closer to the center of the room, where a circular platform shimmered faintly. "This is it," she whispered. "The old archive system." Luke moved beside her, shining a small light over the panels. Symbols flickered across the surface, human writing mixed with patterns that didn't belong to modern language. He remembered stories his father used to tell him when he was a child, stories about the early rulers who built machines that could remember everything humans had ever known. Dana placed her hand near one of the glowing lines. Look at this pattern, she said softly. It's almost like a heartbeat. Luke nodded. The queen wasn't poisoned. The system woke up and flooded her mind. Dana stared at him. If that's true, then what exactly is inside this thing? The thoughts of past rulers, maybe? Their memories. Their voices, Luke said, his voice quiet, steady, all linked through the crown. The room suddenly trembled as if the machine heard them speak. A low sound filled the air, like a whisper mixed with wind. Lines of light brightened along the walls, wrapping around the chamber like moving water. Dana stepped back. Luke, what's happening? He stayed still, watching the light spiral toward the center of the platform. A small projection rose from it, forming a faint image. It was blurry at first, then slowly became clear. It was a woman's figure, wearing royal garments, her expression calm and sad. Luke felt his breath catch. Eleanor? He said softly. The image shook its head gently. No, the figure said in a voice that was almost human. I am what remains of those who came before, Dana gasped. You can speak? The figure looked directly at Luke. When the queen placed the crown upon her head, the memories returned to the surface. All of them. She tried to hold us. No human can carry centuries of lives. She is caught within the river of memory. Luke took one cautious step closer and helped me bring her back. The figure's light dimmed. It is not easy. To free her, someone must take part of the memory burden, share what she holds. Luke didn't hesitate. Then I'll do it. Dana grabbed his arm. Luke, you can't. You don't know what it will do to you. He looked at her, his voice calm but firm. Maybe not. But she doesn't deserve to carry this alone. The figure raised its hand. The lights in the room grew brighter. Luke felt a strange warmth spread through him, through his chest and into his skull. For a second, his world filled with flashes, crowns rising, empires forming, voices calling out across centuries. He stumbled, but didn't step back. Show me how to reach her, he whispered. The figure nodded once, then follow the memory path. Only your will can guide her home. And with that, the light wrapped around him completely, filling the room with brilliance. Dana shielded her eyes, calling his name, but Luke didn't answer. The vault echoed with the thrum of ancient power reborn. When the light finally faded, Luke was gone. Only silence remained, and the faint sound of a heartbeat deep beneath the citadel, beating in rhythm with the quiet breath of the queen far above. The lights in the ancient vault slowly faded to a warm orange glow. Dana Brooks stood in the middle of the room, staring at the empty space where Luke Harris had been only moments before. The machines around her were silent now, as if holding their breath. The faint echo of his voice seemed to hang in the air, then vanished completely. She called out again, Luke. Her voice shook, but there was no answer. Nothing moved. Only the dim pulse of the floor lights kept her company. Dana stared at the round platform glowing softly in the center. She placed her hand on it, feeling the warmth spread into her skin. What did you do to him? She whispered, but the machine didn't respond. It felt alive but calm, as if watching her. For several long seconds, she considered running to get help. But what would she tell them? That her captain had been swallowed by light? That the old machine had spoken like a ghost from history? No one would believe her. The council would shut the vault permanently and destroy the devices before she could explain. She stood there, torn between fear and duty. Then she straightened her back and looked directly at the pulsing lights. If Luke is in there, she said quietly, then I'm staying until I bring him back. Meanwhile, deep inside the luminous network beneath the crown, Luke Harris opened his eyes. He was standing in a place that looked like a vast, endless hall of mirrors. The air shimmered with faint golden dust. Instead of walls, there were floating threads of light stretching in every direction, connecting to images that blinked in and out of existence. One moment he saw a battlefield, the next a throne room, then a family at a dinner table. They were memories, thousands upon thousands of human memories. At first he thought he was dreaming, but then he heard a familiar voice. Captain Harris, said a calm, soft tone behind him. He turned and saw her Queen Eleanor standing only a few steps away. She looked younger, almost glowing, but her eyes were tired. Your Majesty, he said quickly, relief filling his chest. You're alive. I am, she said sadly, but not as I was. This place is the mind of the crown. It holds the history of every ruler who has ever worn it. When I touched it, all their memories rushed into me at once. I could not hold them, and I lost myself in their voices. Luke looked around at the countless strands of light. Then I'm inside your mind, he said slowly. In a way, she replied. You're walking through the memories we now share. You came here through the same link that binds me. He stepped closer to her. Then we can find a way out together. Eleanor shook her head. It isn't that simple. These memories aren't just records. They have feelings, regrets, and pain. They don't want to be forgotten again. As she spoke, the hall around them began to shift. The gold colors turned darker. The voices grew louder, whispering words from forgotten rulers, some angry, some pleading. Faces appeared within the lights, echoing one over another, until the air seemed heavy with human sorrow. Luke clenched his fists and raised his voice. Enough. You've had your time. You were the past. Let her go. The voices blended into one deep sound that filled the chamber. We are what made your world. Without us, there is no crown, no throne, no rule. Luke glared into the light and shouted, and without her, there will be no future. The golden threads quivered, vibrating like strings of an unseen instrument. Eleanor reached for his hand. They can hear you, she said. They're listening. He took her hand firmly. Then let them remember what it means to be human. The light around them changed again, softening into brighter colors. For a moment, the memories stopped moving and focused on Luke. An old voice spoke, quieter now, almost grateful. You carry our past well, guard, but are you willing to bear it? Luke hesitated. No. If I must share the weight to free her, then yes. The air brightened, blinding him for a second. He felt warmth flood every part of his body, and the light faded. He found that he could see images differently, more clearly, as if some of those old memories were now a part of him. He could feel their pain, their hope, their longing to see the world improve beyond what they ever built. He turned to Eleanor. She looked stronger, her color returning. The heavy glow around her shoulders was gone. You did it, she whispered. They released me. Luke smiled faintly. But you're free now. That's what matters. Before she could reply, the space around them began to shake. The golden threads snapped one by one. It was as if the memory world itself was collapsing. The system is shutting down, Eleanor said. The link won't hold us here any longer. You must return, Luke. And what about you? I'll follow. You gave me strength. I can find my way now. The light swirled again, pulling them in opposite directions. Luke tried to hold her hand, but she slipped away like sunlight through water. Find me when you wake, she said, her voice fading. The light consumed everything. When it cleared, Luke felt the cold touch of real air on his face. He was lying on the floor of the vault again. His vision swam, his head aching, but he was alive. The machines around him were silent, their lights dimmed. Dana knelt beside him, shock in her eyes. Luke, can you hear me? She cried. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His body was trembling, his mind heavy with strange new thoughts. But one image burned brightly inside him, the face of the Queen, alive and strong within that sea of memory. He slowly nodded. She's coming back, he said weakly. When somewhere far above them in the royal infirmary, Queen Eleanor's eyes flickered open. The faint glow around her crown disappeared, and a long, steady breath escaped her lips. The Queen had returned. Morning came slowly over the shining towers of the capital. The city lay quiet after the long night of fear. For the first time since the coronation, the great bells of the citadel were silent. Inside the royal infirmary, the sound of steady breathing broke the stillness. Queen Eleanor had opened her eyes. The doctors stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to say. She looked around the bright room. Everything seemed clearer, softer. The faces of the people nearby were full of wonder, as if they were seeing a miracle. A nurse wiped her eyes, whispering a prayer under her breath. Eleanor slowly sat up, her movements weak but graceful. She touched the golden band still resting beside her on the blanket. The crown was no longer glowing. It lay quiet, harmless, almost ordinary. "Where is Captain Harris?" she asked softly. Her voice was dry but firm. The head doctor hesitated. He is still being checked after what happened below the citadel," she said. "He was found unconscious in the vault. No one knows how he survived." Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. the memory returning to her like a gentle wave. She could still see the endless lights, the floating faces of old rulers, and Luke standing among them, refusing to leave her side. His courage had broken through the wall of history itself. "I need to see him," Eleanor said. An hour later, she walked slowly down the long corridor toward the recovery wing. She did not wear her royal robe, only a simple white gown. The servants bowed as she passed, their faces filled with emotion. The guards stood stiff at attention, almost afraid to believe what they were seeing. When she entered Luke's room, he was sitting near the window, looking out at the sunlight spilling over the city. His eyes seemed different, calm but distant. A faint smile crossed his face when he saw her reflection in the window. "You woke up," he said quietly. "So did you," she replied, stepping closer. He turned to face her. There was a softness in his eyes that had not been there before, something deep and unreadable. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Alive," she said with a small smile. "And you?" He shrugged slightly. "Different. Like I've been carrying someone else's memories inside my head. Sometimes they whisper things, names I don't know. But I feel at peace." She sat beside him, the light catching faint golden strands in her hair. "You shared their burden," she said. "The voices of our past, they still live inside you now." Luke looked down at his hands. "It's strange. I can feel what they felt, the pride, the fear, the hope. All those kings and queens who tried to make the right choices. But it's not heavy anymore. It's like those memories are finally quiet." There was silence between them for a moment. Outside, the sun climbed above the horizon, painting the towers gold. "The people need to see you," Luke said softly. "They've been waiting for news. It's time they knew their queen is still with them." Eleanor nodded. "Yes. But they also need to see more than a queen. They need to see what humanity truly stands for." That afternoon, the courtyard of the citadel filled with people. Every screen across the capital showed the scene. There were no banners, no grand decorations, only the queen standing before her people, her crown resting lightly in her hands. She spoke in a calm and strong voice that carried through the open air. "My friends," she said, "you saw me fall, and you feared I would not rise again. Let me tell you what happened. The day I wore this crown, I touched the memory of every ruler who came before us. Their voices filled my mind, trying to remind me of what we once were. And I listened." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "They taught me something. Power alone cannot rule a world. Only understanding and courage can. One man reminded me of that when I could no longer stand. He gave me the strength to return." Luke stood in the background among the guards, his face half in shadow. He met her eyes for just a moment. She smiled faintly, but said nothing more. "So today," the queen continued, "I promise you this. The time of kings and queens ruling from command towers is over. We will lead together, not from fear, but from hope. Every voice will be heard, because every memory of our past has guided us to this moment." The square filled with the sound of cheering. People cried openly, waving their hands and flags. The bells began to ring once more, this time bright and pure. As the noise grew, Eleanor stepped down from the dais and walked toward Luke. "You kept your promise," she said quietly. He smiled. "And you kept yours. You came back." She studied him for a long moment. "Do you remember what they said to you in the vault? The old rulers?" He nodded slowly. "They told me every memory must find its rest. I understand now. It's not about remembering everything. It's about choosing what to pass on." She reached out and touched his shoulder. "Then you will be our living memory, Luke. The guardian who carries what history must never forget." He bowed slightly, his smile gentle. "And you, my queen, will be our future." The sun sank lower behind the citadel, wrapping the city in gold and crimson. The crowd still cheered below, the sound echoing through the towers like a song carried by the wind. For the first time in years, hope felt real again. The crown, now silent and still, gleamed where it rested beside Eleanor. It no longer hummed with power or light. Its work was done. Above the city, a new banner unfurled across the palace wall, simple white cloth marked with a single bright human hand. It was a symbol of unity, of life, of memory and promise. And under that bright sign stood a queen who had faced the past, and a guard who had carried its weight, together leading humanity into a dawn that finally belonged to them all.